right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the FearCast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me today for today's episode. Today's episode is probably going to be a bit of a short one, so kind of a quick one. I've got a little bit of time, so we're going to throw one together. So first off, if you are new to the podcast, this is a question and answer based podcast where you get to send me questions about OCD and anxiety, as you can probably imagine. And I will likely read it, consider it, and put it up on a future episode, as I'm doing today. So today's question comes from Adam. Now, Adam did the sneaky, tricky move, which is he went online and he sent me an audio recording of his voice for his question. So he did the old school thing, which is record it, put it up on a Google Drive, and he emailed me the link. So he went over to FearCastPodcast.com, sent me the link through the submit a question link there, and that's how I got it. So I got it a couple of days ago, and it cuts to the top of the line. So that's what we're doing today. So I will play his question here in just a moment and then go over it. It's a good question. It's kind of an interesting spin on some stuff we've talked about in the past related to sensorimotor obsessions. And it's a bit of a twist that we don't typically hear. And you'll hear his confusion. And I think there's a good reason why that there's a little bit of confusion, but you'll hear that shortly. Now, before I jump off into that, I hope everybody's doing well. I guess the fires have slowed down in Southern California, which is fantastic. I know they're still moving. They're still doing stuff. I know the firefighters are still doing their darndest to try to get the perimeter around it in the various places, but it is slowing down. We're hoping for rain, I guess, but we're just hoping for things to slow down. So for all of you who had Southern California in your thoughts and prayers, we genuinely appreciate it. So let me get off to Adam's question, and then I will answer it.
I suffer from sensorimotor OCD since a few years back. However, I've recently run into a new problem, and I'm not sure if it's related to my sensorimotor OCD or if this is something new entirely. For context, my OCD has usually been focused on my breath and bodily sensations like the feeling of fabric on my clothes and skin. My ultimate fear has been that I won't ever be able to stop thinking about these, and it will cause me to not live in the moment or be able to relax since it's always present and I can't stop my mind from focusing on these things instead of things that I really wish to focus on. For my current problem, I have a neighbor who has a very distinct smell. I recently ran into them in my building and I noticed their smell again. For some reason, I found myself incredibly bothered by this smell. Even after we parted ways, I thought about their smell while I was at work. I found myself thinking about it when I got back home. Later in the week, I found myself thinking about it while I was cooking and exercising. Now, every single time that I breathe in through my nostrils, the sensation of air going through my nose sets off a reminder of that encounter with my neighbor, which makes me think of them and their smell. This is becoming incredibly bothersome since it constantly takes me out of whatever it is that I'm doing. Even when I'm somewhere completely different, I feel like I can imagine their smell whenever I draw breath, and it completely takes me out of whatever it is I'm doing. I fear that I will always be distracted by this and imagine a smell that I know for a fact is only in my head. I'm not sure how I should tackle this. I feel it has elements of sensorimotor OCD since the trigger is my breathing, but the underlying thing that caused this in the first place is a smell from a different person. What do you think? Is this sensorimotor OCD? And what would you suggest I should do to treat it?
All right. So, Adam, thank you so much for sending that question in. I really appreciated this question. I think that you were, I heard in your question, well, first off, I don't know if anybody else thought when it first started, it sounded like AI. It sounded like that kind of recording that just it has that AI vibe to it. But then you kind of stumbled on a word or two, and I went, okay, this feels real, unless the robots are getting smarter, unless they're learning, and unless they're trying to confuse me. In which case they are. I am confused by it. I don't like AI. I'll put that out there now. Now, if the robots take over, I'm here for you. I was always here for you, robots. Don't eat me and my family. All hail robot. However, just between you and me, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't want it. Anyways, all right, I've said enough. All right, let's get on to Adam's question. So, Adam, so your question again was about sensorimotor, whether or not this new obsession, this seemingly new obsession, is this sensorimotor as you've always experienced it to be, and in which case you know what to do, you know how to handle it, or is it something new? Is it something that requires something different? So I want to talk about what I'm hearing in this, and again, I'll acknowledge that I have not heard of every single case in the world, and there may be other people out there who would say this is absolutely something different. But you know what? You messaged me, so I'm messaging you. So within the world of OCD, I think it's important to remember. And we've talked about this in the past. OCD is OCD across the board. No matter whatever we call it, we're calling it contamination obsessions. We're calling it harm obsessions. We're calling it sexual orientation obsessions, existential OCD, scrupulosity, health anxiety, hypochondria, sensorimotor. We're talking about OCD, period. It is the cycle of intrusive, unwanted thoughts that produce anxiety. Now, they can be thoughts, feelings, mental images, physical sensations, urges, but they produce anxiety. Now, we've talked about anxiety, whether or not it always has to be anxiety. Sometimes it's an unwanted feeling state. Sometimes it's ambivalence, and sometimes it's like a nervous uneasiness. Sometimes it's blah, right? But generally speaking, we're going to call it anxiety, fear. So there is the unwanted intrusive thought, the trigger that just comes from somewhere and everywhere that is neutral, neither good nor bad. You talked about it yourself. Your typical one has to do with your breath and your fabric, and the fabric on your skin. We're going to wear clothes and we're going to breathe. One of those is definitely more important than the other. It's the breathing one. So breathe and wear clothes, also important, especially depending on where you are. But we're going to do those things, and they're neutral. They're neither good nor bad, right nor wrong. They just are. I think breathing is important. I'm biased. But that's what's going to happen. So it's going to be this intrusive thing. It produces this thought, oh no, what if blank? Or if blank, then blank. And now we don't like the blanks in that, and that produces this sense of anxiety. Now, we would rather feel good rather than bad, so we're going to try to do something to make sure that we feel good and healthy and safe and right again, or we just don't want that story to happen the way that it's saying. So that's where the compulsion comes in. The compulsion is going to be anything that we might do to make sure that the story doesn't happen, right? For a lot of folks with sensorimotor, it's going to be avoidance. It's going to be don't have the thing, don't have the thought, don't have the experience. Sometimes it's going to be trying to wrench your attention and force your attention back to the present, or force it back to something so you don't think about that other thought, or so you're ensuring that you're having a good and happy life. Sometimes it can be kind of magical associations, right? It can be tapping, it can be counting, it can be prayer, it can be other sort of things to try to get the attention away from whatever that thing is. Okay. And it can be anything under the sun. Now, once you do that, you feel better. Oh, good. I was able to get my attention back to this thing. I'm fine. What we inadvertently do is we send the message that whenever we get this distraction, this unwanted thought, this unwanted feeling, the awareness of this sensation, this is how we deal with it. We deal with it through prayer or tapping or avoidance or thought suppression or whatever the compulsive means was. Remember, the awareness in the question was neutral. The awareness in the question in and of itself isn't a problem. It's simply an awareness in a question. But the secret power that anxiety always has is that feeling of anxiety, that discomfort. And it's going to wrench you back in oftentimes. So that's where I often say OCD isn't really a thought problem, it's a feeling problem. How do we deal with and make space for that uneasiness, that discomfort, that anxiety in whatever that feared story is? I'm never going to stop paying attention to this. Okay, now I've rambled on too much. So when it comes to sensorimotor, we can think about it as this kind of hierarchical umbrella type of thing. Okay, so at the very top, we've got OCD. OCD, under the umbrella of OCD, we have all those little subtypes that we just talked about. One of those sub-umbrellas is going to be hyper-awareness obsessions. Now, hyper-awareness is going to be just a general catch-all for being over-aware, very aware of your surroundings, or very aware of some things. Within hyper-awareness, you can often have awareness to sounds around you. So sometimes it can be, the clicking on or the clicking off of the air conditioning system. It can be the sound of your chair, that squeaky wheel sort of thing. It can be car horns that are around you. It can be the sound of the wind or whatever it might be. Now, within that, it can also be stuff within your body. Now, I think to a certain degree there can be there could be a good argument that phonophobia or misophonia might be under this umbrella as well. Misophonia being think about miserable, right? Miserable, phonia, phone, sound, right? So sound that just freaking makes you miserable, right? For me, it's when somebody is sitting next to me eating carrots. It grades on me. I'm sure there's a sound like that for you out there, or for other people out there, maybe not just for you, Adam, but other people. So that's misophonia. Phonophobia is often going to be a sound that produces a sense of fear, right? And there can be a lot of things related to that. I think to a certain degree, you can think about as, fireworks can, produce a kind of a PTSD type of response for some folks, but it can generalize to just loud sounds that activate someone's fight or flight system. Anyways, that's a whole nother topic. But so we've got hyper-awareness that can be a lot of things. Now, hyper-awareness can also be a hyper-awareness of thoughts, right? This is where kind of the metacognitive obsessions can come in, where you're really aware of that internal, monologue, internal potentially dialogue, internal whatever it might be. You're aware of the fact that you're having thoughts, and you're aware of the fact that you're aware of having thoughts, and it's turtles all the way down. Within that as well, we have sensorimotor. Sensorimotor is a broad term that just describes our awareness of our body and our motions in space, right? And what our body is feeling and doing at any time. So for you, Adam, it sounds like you're already aware of this. The feeling of fabric on your skin, you're hyper aware of what that feels like, right? You're hyper aware of your breath. Now, for some people, it can be the frequency of breath, the depth of breath, the intensity of the breath, the sensations related to breath. Is it coming through your nose? Is it breathing right? Is it breathing wrong? Right? It can be a lot of things, right? For some people, it can be their swallowing. It can be their blinking. It can be just the motions. It can be little itches. It can be the feeling of their scalp. It can be a lot of stuff. So I think what you're having right now, you're talking about a traditional awareness of sensorimotor. But I think what you're noticing here is now an awareness of the next thing up, which is just a hyper-awareness of the world around you and having a memory. So you talked about having this kind of new experience where you're having where you were bothered by your neighbor's smell. Okay. Now it got me wondering, First off, what do they smell like? I'm very curious. I'm sure a lot of everybody else is too. So we have this. You had this experience, and then it kind of got stuck in your craw a little bit. It sounds like it was an interesting, odd, different smell than you're normally used to, and so your brain is trying to figure it out or trying to understand, or at the very least, some question occurred in your mind that your brain grabbed onto. Some thought happened and grabbed onto it. So I was kind of wondering about what is it about this smell or what are you doing in relation to this smell? Are you trying to place it? Are you trying to figure it out? What is it that's making this smell? Are you trying to compare it to other smells? Or is it just simply put, you are bothered by the smell itself? Or, as I think you alluded to, you're bothered by the fact that you're bothered by it, or you're bothered by the fact that you're aware of it. Okay, all those things can occur. This sounds to me like just another manifestation of hyper awareness, which is, sensorimotor's older brother, or bigger brother from another mother. It's a different related thing. Remember, it's all just OCD. Your brain is hyper fixated on X. You don't like X because the hyperfixation on X means blank. Well, I don't like blank and I don't want blank to happen to me. So I better do something to make sure that blank never happens to me. Or at the very least, I can stop focusing on X. Oh my gosh, how do I do that? I'm going to do all those things to make myself feel better. I'm willing to bet you've stumbled on a couple of things that have gotten you there. Here's what I think you ultimately need to do. I think you need to accept the reality that for right now in your life, you are distracted by this smell and you're going to breathe. So you're going to get that smell, or you're going to get a reminder of that smell. You said that smell is occurring in your mind because it's not occurring, that smell is not shoved up your nose and chasing you around. If it is, you've got bigger things to worry about. But it's there. So there's a memory and there's a thought that is bothering you through this association when you breathe. So I don't think the answer is breathe as an exposure. I don't think the answer is go become best friends with this person so that you can habituate to this smell. Sometimes there are smells that bother us, but I don't think the smell is a problem that needs a solution. That person smells the way they smell. Everybody smells different. So I've been told I don't smell very well for a lot of reasons. So people smell. I've been told people are smelly. I can't really tell. I've had people tell me that they will fart around me a lot, and I just don't know unless I hear it. And I can hear it, but I'll never be able to smell it. Anyways, that was way too much information for all y'all to know about. All right, so what do we do with the smell? I think the fear goes back to the same thing that you were worried about with the breath and the skin. What if you won't ever be able to stop thinking about this? And what if you won't be able then to enjoy life now because of this smell or the memory or the thought of or the association to this smell? Whatever you are doing, if you're working with a therapist, whatever you're doing with them, apply those approaches to this too. Now, if you're not currently working with a therapist, I think one of the ways that you can do this is to one, challenge the importance of this thought for yourself. Is it genuinely necessary to fight this thought, to be concerned about it? Now, I'm willing to bet, because you've messaged me and because you have a very rational mind, you probably said, no, there's no reason for me to be thinking about this thought any more than I already am. Great. You might also say, because it's not a problem, there's no reason for me to do anything about it, though anxiety will convince you otherwise sometimes. So we're trying to say this thought can be there, this awareness can be there, and this distraction, while distracting, while obnoxious, is there. So what do? We tolerate the reality that we're going to get distracted by things. And for right now, your distraction is the memory of that smell. So how do we practice being distracted? Well, you can do a couple of things. You can set up Post-it notes around your house. You can write smell on it. Post it up all over the place. If you live with other people, give them 10, 20 Post-it notes and say, hide these in various places. And as you live your life, you're going to open a drawer and there's going to be the smell Post-it note. It's going to be a distraction. And you're going to go, oh my gosh, it's distracting me. Yeah, it did. And then your job, once you get that distraction, isn't to get pissed off, to get angry, to get annoyed, to try to fix it, whatever it might be. It's to say, oh yeah, that guy's smell. Okay. Oh, anyways, that neighbor, he got me again. And then you keep living your life. Intentionally, calmly, compassionately redirect back to your life. We're going to get distractions. And then we keep moving on. I will periodically, you've heard me complain in the past perhaps about my back. Periodically, I feel it. It's been feeling a lot better lately for a number of reasons. And periodically I'll move in a way where I go, and it gets me, and it hurts. And it does hurt. And I go, oh yeah, that's right, my back. And it's a gentle reminder that I can be careful with myself. But I don't need to celebrate it. I don't need to call my doctor. I don't need to immediately stop what I'm doing to go stretch. I straighten up and I get back to my life. Think about any other distractions. Think about a boyfriend, a girlfriend. Think about a cousin, a neighbor, someone, something that bothered you from the past. Periodically, we're going to get a reminder of those things. What do we do with that? Nothing. Nothing other than to say, thanks, brain, for the reminder, but I got other things to do. And I'm going to go do those things. Another thing you can do, and I like this at this exposure, this is where you can get something called the Yap app, or just a general, a random reminder generator. What this does is you grab your phone and you download this app and you put in, maybe you want to put smell, or you want to put stank, or you want to put neighbor in it. And you can find these various apps. The Yap app, if you have an iPhone, is one of them. And you put that in and you say from what hours you want this reminder. You say how many reminders you want to get during those hours, and it will randomly text you. It will pop up, it will look like a text, and it will say stank or neighbor or, again, whatever it is. And it will be a distraction. I would encourage you for a time that you would put it on, you would put your phone on, I suppose. You can make a sound, not silent, the reverse of silent. So you are distracted. Good. The goal is we're practicing flexibility and fluidity with distractions. We're going to get them. I'm going to get them. You're going to get them just in life. You and I we're not promised to never get distracted by external things or by internal things. And by internal, I can refer to physical sensations. We can refer to thoughts. We can refer to memories. And we're not promised that we're not going to get distracted or annoyed by things around us, like a noisy neighbor or a stanky neighbor or birds outside or whatever it might be. Our job is to live life knowing that we are going to get distracted because we are all in the same boat, and no one was promised special treatment for distractions and annoyances. So that's where we practice. So catch yourself then in what you do when this awareness comes up. Do you fight it? Do you yell at it? Do you get mad at yourself? Do you tense up? Do you do any magical things to try to eliminate that? Do you try to suppress it and pretend like you didn't think about it? Instead, notice that you notice it and keep moving on. It's going to be annoying, but we incorporate those into life as distractions because no one's above it. And you can get through it, and the annoyance will be there, and then it will go away. It'll come up, and then it'll go away. And the more that you allow yourself to be distracted, the more you practice it, and the easier it gets. And the goal will also be you intentionally spend less time thinking about these distractions, however they may be. So, Adam, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for the question. To anybody else out there who had a question similar to this or an experience similar to this, I hope this was helpful. If you have feedback or you would like to offer other advice or guidance or thoughts, message me. Go over to Instagram. I'm FearCast Podcast over there, or you can send me a message over at FearCastPodcast.com. So thanks so much, Adam, and best of luck. Thank you for listening to the FearCast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at FearCastPodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@FearCastPodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at FearCastPodcast on Instagram. If you like the FearCast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the FearCast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to FearCastPodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously.